Hi guys, that's the time to start the highlight of today's our legal panel, and I do hope that all our panel participants would be with me very soon. You know me, I'm Sasha Pitkevich, I'm leading blockchain professionals community. But on this hour, I would be just a moderator for our wonderful experts. We have four legal professionals, four legal experts to discuss. And I will ask our elves now to let them in. And I will just quickly name people and then they will speak a little bit about themselves. We have Eva Wong here. She's Web3 legal specialist advising the core blockchain engineering contributor to Polkadot. And I met Eva last year on Ethereum DevCon conference in Bangkok. Then we have Ilija Rilakovic, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ilija, please forgive me and tell us how it would be later. He's lawyer and law decoded firm. And I met Ilija a week ago on ETH Belgrade. Then we have Natalia Momot, who is first like counselor at First Counsel. And we have Niko Demchuk, who is head of compliance consulting at AMLBot. So guys, please, in the same order, tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience, obviously connected to the topics we are going to discuss. So Web3, blockchain, DLT, all this stuff. Eva?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sasha. And so nice to see you again. As Sasha mentioned, we met at DevCon in Bangkok last year, where we saw Sasha wearing a Polkadot t-shirt and we chased her down, me and a developer in Parity as well. So we were curious to see who this person was wearing a Polkadot t-shirt. So there we were, and that's how we met. And then I did a panel on developer liability at DevCon, which makes absolute sense. And also, it's quite exciting to be from a different ecosystem, to be speaking at an Ethereum conference for developers. So a little bit about me. I will be brief. I am Eva Wong. I am the Director of Legal at Parity Technologies. I have been here for 2 and a bit years, which is a lifetime in the Web3 world, as my fellow panelists will probably attest to. And yes, we are the core contributor to Polkadot, which I hope most people know is a permissionless, decentralized blockchain protocol. And my perspective on all of these things is I look at it from a developer first perspective and from a blockchain first perspective. And we, in Parity Legal, we also do a regulatory rewind. We live stream it once a week at the moment. And we talk about all the developments in regulatory and policy, but what specifically how it impacts from a developer perspective, liability perspective, ecosystem perspective, and then more broadly around the industry. From my accent, you can tell I am based in the UK, and I am therefore English qualified. I can't possibly speak on all the other jurisdictions, but we have observations around those other jurisdictions. And I obviously, like everyone else on this panel, we're lawyers. We are not your lawyers. We can not give you specific legal advice. So all of this is just a really exciting conversation, because I'm really excited about the breadth of this panel and the other panelists, because it's not often I get to be on a legal panel. I'm usually a token legal person on a more broader industry panel, and I get to give legal insights. So here I get to speak to people in other jurisdictions and in other legal contexts. So I'm really excited to meet everybody else and to have this fantastic conversation where we share our knowledge with everyone.
Thank you, Eva. And that's exactly why we have all of you guys to cover the different parts of the world, different angles. And Ilija, mic is to you.
Hi, everyone. Sasha, you were right. You pronounced my surname correctly. I'm Ilija Rilakovic. And I met Sasha last week at ETH Belgrade. And I was not sure if I've heard Eva Wong on stage at DevCon, but now I'm I'm reassured I was in the audience last year in Bangkok. It was a great talk about developers' liability. So if you have some time, head to DevCon's YouTube channel and listen to her. So as I said, I'm Ilija. I'm based in Belgrade, Serbia, and I'm an attorney at law. I cover corporate tax and crypto law as a field of expertise. I'm also one of the organizers of ETH Belgrade conference. This year we had third edition, I think the biggest so far, with over 1,000 people. And I also have done some policy work with our Serbian blockchain association on especially on tax issues. So to wrap this up, looking forward to discussing with you all the topics we prepared for today, and I yield the floor to Sasha.
Thank you, Ilija. And I must say that Serbian Ethereum community is probably the most vibrant I ever saw. They have like every Friday mornings gathering, frequent meetups and something. And there was a wonderful warm atmosphere on ETH Belgrade last week. And over to Natalia. Natalia, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm on the other side of the world currently, and as you can see, it's very dark here because I'm moving further to Asia, to the east part of the world. I'm Russian qualified lawyer, but sometime 10 years ago, I moved to Hong Kong, where I got qualified as well, just recently. And then from Hong Kong, I had another move further to Asia, to Singapore. So I'm based in Singapore. That's where I work. A little bit about the construct and the concept that I'm working in. First Counsel is a legal tech startup, not a startup anymore, but it's a legal tech company that helps smaller enterprises, startups, emerging tech companies. And my focus in this company is fintech, and specifically not just blockchain and Web3, but more widely fintech companies. But recently, in the recent years, in the recent 5 years, I'm mostly working with blockchain, Web3, VASP, etc. And separately, I'm also seconded to a law firm, to a Singapore law firm, where I assist a team that is covering corporate governance, compliance, and regulatory aspects of Singapore regulations and laws. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalia. We are happy to have you. We have already London, we have Serbia, we have Singapore, and now Niko, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Niko Demchuk and I'm representing AMLBot. It's a blockchain analytics company, basically providing compliance solutions for crypto and blockchain related projects. Me myself, I'm also a lawyer. I think I will then represent Europe, since I was studying in Europe in Estonia. Now I'm based in Spain, Barcelona. And basically I was working as a lawyer in a law firm, helping crypto projects applying for a license, crypto licenses, also helping them with compliance issues. And then I moved to Big Four doing audit, AML compliance audit. And since then, I was working as an in-house lawyer for one of the biggest European crypto exchange at that point of time, Bitstamp, and now I'm in-house lawyer for a blockchain analytics company. So I think I'm working with crypto and blockchain for the past 10 years from different angle, as a lawyer, as a compliance specialist. We do also have a lot of customers from Web3 industry, so that's why I'm following what is going on there, what are the trends, and plus I also participate in NATBA Association, where we discuss all the new trends, all the initiative from different countries, how they would want to regulate cryptocurrency, blockchain, or even now they start looking at DeFi sector.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the introduction. And now is the time for our first, I will say, warm-up question. And that's obvious. Like when we are currently looking to all the regulatory frameworks which are varying widely country by country, how can potential Web3 project navigate compliance while still fostering the innovation globally? Yesterday, we had a wonderful discussion with Alistair Brown, who is like head of open banking, and we were discussing stable coins and CBDC. And there was a question from a public, what prevents now the rapid adoption? And their answer was, what? Legal frameworks. Guys, please share your opinion. Yeah. Who can start? Probably Natalia?
Yeah, sure. I can start from the smallest jurisdictions, but in the world that adopted regulatory framework towards virtual asset service providers and virtual assets regulating this area. And with the fastest adoption, what I've also seen in the past few years since the Payment Services Act came in force, that the move of projects, of Web3 based projects, of blockchain projects, of DeFi from other jurisdictions to Singapore slowed down, maybe because while the regulator started with the started one of the first regulating this this area, but also it is currently seen more as on the stricter side of the regulators, especially with not just regulating for AML purposes, but also regulating for the consumer protection, technology risk management, etc., etc. So it's like it's adding up a lot more requirements and regulations to the entities that are regulated in Singapore. What I've seen also recently with this seemingly stricter approach in Singapore is that a lot of startups, while they still have a base in Singapore, they start either gradually. For example, they start their projects gradually in a stage-based approach. For example, they don't want to be regulated at first, so they will start as a software or IT company, and then they will at the next stage they will look at the jurisdictions where the regulators are more favorable and maybe the regulations are less strict comparing to Singapore, to get their first licenses and to get their first foot in the market, and in order to understand whether their project will be interesting enough or profitable enough, etc. And then when they are ready, they go to the jurisdictions where the regulations are mature, strict, and the projects are aware that they are able to comply with all the requirements. This is one of the approaches that I've seen among our clients, amongst my clients. Another approach that I've also seen is the layering compliance or layering approach. For example, if the project wants to ensure that it is doing everything in compliance with the regulations, it will seek legal opinions. It will ensure that it has some sort of compliance framework from the beginning, in order to for this framework to then grow, like the processes, procedures, etc., to then develop together with the development of the project or with the development of the company, and going globally to more countries and more jurisdictions. Yeah, so these are the two approaches that I'm seeing currently amongst the Web3 projects, not just Web3, but fintech projects that that are touching on blockchain and trying to navigate and balance between maturing regulations, more compliance, more requirements, and at the same time the development of their what they want to achieve basically with their projects.
Thank you, Natalia. Ilija, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I agree with Natalia. I signed everything, and I would add only that navigating in today would be more like navigating through minefield because of all of the pieces of regulation that are currently present. So I think that many projects do forum shopping. So looking what every jurisdiction has and picking what's the most favorable for them. So that would be some hybrid approach between those two that Natalia mentioned. But in any case, I think it would be wise, like cost-benefit analysis-wise, to evaluate what you build, what is your service or product about, and ask for opinion before you go to market in order to avoid overly high compliance costs and potentially to avoid fines. That's my stance.
Thank you. And Niko, probably add something on your side?
Yes, I do, and maybe I would say I would disagree a bit with my previous speakers, and also maybe disagree with you when you say that when you ask the audience what is the constraints for development of Web3 industry, and they said legal, because I honestly do not see it as a constraint. Just to be clear, yes, when we are talking about Web3 industry, what we mean? We mean the decentralized nature. We mean that the user holds his own fund, he has his own wallet. We mean DeFi arrangements, DAO organizations. So basically, it's very difficult to identify who is a central point that provides a service. And to my knowledge, since I've also participated in different working groups, this DeFi sector, Web3 sector, is totally unregulated at the moment. So that's why we have so many DeFi protocols. They develop themselves, they work, they function, and they really do not need to do anything because there is no legal requirements to them. There is no licensing, there is no AML obligations to them, nothing. So that's what, if we're talking about this legal perspective. So as a lawyer, to be honest, at that point of time now, I do not see any legal constraint if we are talking about true Web3 projects that are truly decentralized, consist of DAOs, consist of smart contracts, etc. But what I see also, what is happening, the different countries started to look at it at the moment. So they started to actually learn what's DeFi, how it affects financial system, etc. And we have initiatives and some reports. For example, US, they did their own analysis, what is DeFi, and they issued its own report where they say that so many criminals, when they steal cryptocurrency or somehow they manage to receive illegal cryptocurrency, they go to DeFi sectors to use them in order to launder crypto assets. So that's why this summary, this actually recommendation says that DeFi sector, maybe the legislative authorities of USA needs to look at it and impose AML KYC implication on the DeFi sector. Also in Europe, MiCA, for example, we have the regulation very clearly states that DeFi is not regulated. So DeFi does not fall under the MiCA. They do not need to comply for a license. They do not need to be obliged under AML KYC. What is interesting also, when it comes to Europe, that they try to regulate. For example, DAO was tried when it was a draft legislation for the anti-money laundering regulation. In one of the first drafts, there was an article saying that DAO should actually also be obliged to conduct AML, KYC processes and face customers. But then in the final draft of this law, it was removed because honestly, it's really difficult to implement at the moment. And the initiative of the regulation, that if I would say, maybe it's coming from the first, let's say, organization that started to speaking about this, is a FATF, yes, in their updated guidelines on risk-based approach on virtual asset and virtual asset service providers. They say that when they were analyzing DeFi and Web3, they say, yes, we see that it's a decentralized project, so it's difficult to find this central authority who provides the services. But in some cases, and especially at the very beginning of the DeFi protocol, it's still someone who controls or has sufficient influence on the development of the project. So this someone might need to be registered as a WASP and then also comply with other requirements. But we see it only as a FATF recommendation. At the moment, I don't see that it comes through in any countries in the world. So from my point of view, as such as legal constraint, there is none for DeFi or Web3 projects. There are some risks that needs to be taken into consideration because DeFi project can still be sanctioned. We saw it at Tornado Cash, we saw it at different other projects, and I will talk about them a bit later. But like a clear regulation that DeFi needs to have a license or needs to comply with some requirements, at the moment I don't see it. And I'm in favor of this. We do not need regulation at this moment of time for DeFi because it will hinder innovation. DeFi is in a very infancy state. It needs to develop, and at the moment to adopt any regulation would actually kill the innovation from my point of view. But it needs to be self-regulation, and I will talk about this a bit later.
Guys, I love our discussion because basically when I was saying that the most of the companies are scared with the adoption, that's because, when there is no clear rules, there are two approaches, because some people think that if there are no rules, that it's forbidden and it's better not to go there. And some people think that it's allowed and let's go there. And we exactly see that in the discussion. And that's basically nicely leaded. And Niko, thank you for you really paved the path to the next question. And the next question is, how can Web3 startups structure DAOs to mitigate legal liabilities while maintaining decentralized governance? Because it's not a secret. When we are shaping the true Web3 project, we need to manage that. And when it's true and core crypto and Web3, we want to have that decentralized. And then we're establishing DAO. And yes, I understand the opinions about allowed, not allowed, but guys, I need your opinion, and probably Eva, I will ask you. Tell me, what do you think about this, also from a parity point of view and from your experience point of view? What is advice to structure DAO?
Well, very interesting and lively discussion already. Thank you, Niko and Ilija and Natalia. I love this panel. I love the fact that we get controversial straight away, and I'm going to be not controversial. I actually agree with all of you, and I think lawyers will always say, talk to the lawyers, let's have some legal clarity, but that is true. But I also think Niko is right, because to some extent, if you don't have the regulation, or if the regulation specifically doesn't address something, then it feels like, it's not the wild, wild west. It is more, you can innovate until you can't. But that balance is quite a scary one for innovators and for builders. And I just wanted to kind of reflect a little bit on that first before I talk about the DAO structure, because that's possibly one of the solutions. And I think if we take a step back from blockchain, but you think about any emerging tech, that's the same pattern, isn't it? You get new technology and you get, oh my God, what can it do? How is it going to impact people? Who do we need to protect? And different countries respond to it with different means, depending on what they perceive to be the social risk to their particular country. So with Web2, we saw that Europe came up with, the big concerns around privacy when Web2 came about. Europe responded with GDPR, just as Europe has responded to crypto digital assets with MiCA. It's setting about this sort of global standard of harmonized, it's setting the European standard, which then is such a high bar that it almost becomes a global standard for some compliance. And I think there's similarities there, because in the rest of the world, for example, Singapore and Hong Kong and the UK to some extent, it's about looking at the financial services impact of blockchain and digital assets. And the response from the regulatory perspective has been from a financial services perspective, almost. I'm hugely generalizing here. And from some other parts of the world, it's been more about consumer protection, because it's about crypto adoption and the harm that has been associated with some famous scams, for example. So that's just a reflection on innovation versus how the regulation follows where the harm is perceived. In relation to DAOs, I guess it's sort of seen as one of the, because jurisdictionally it is difficult. Blockchain specifically is such a global concept. It is hard to pinpoint who to sue, where to sue, and what the damage is and how it has been caused. And this is very much to Niko's point, I think. Finding a entity responsible or a person responsible when it comes to immutable smart contracts and how they're executed and where the damage is caused. For lawyers, it's almost like it's either explodes people's minds or it makes you really excited because you want to think about how this construct will work. And DAOs, by their nature, are, most people will know, they're decentralized, they're autonomous, and they're organizations. But how can being in a DAO either protect you or not protect you? That is not always very clear. So I'll just pause on that for one moment, because I don't know the full knowledge of the audience here, because we can't see them, we don't know where they come from. So I don't want to go too far into DAOs and smart contracts and the case law, but there is certainly a perception that being in a DAO would protect a person from by participating in a DAO, you're not going to be legally accountable. That isn't necessarily always the case, certainly in some jurisdictions more than others. So there is not a lot of case law about this, which is why it's exciting. And it does seem to be the case that in the US, there are at least 2 cases where participation in a DAO, so the Uki DAO case and the Lido DAO case, has shown that it is possible for, there's nuances around this, it is possible for a participation in a DAO to be considered still legally accountable. There are nuances around this, and I would say that that's why, in some ways, incorporation of a DAO is actually protects the participants more, because it sets a corporate entity to represent that DAO. I will pause there and let the others reflect back, and we can continue this conversation around DAOs and DAO liability. But it is definitely not an automatic fix for innovation without precaution.
Guys, any addition?
Well, just a short remark. I think that once you have a legal wrapper around DAO, which certainly is useful, then I think that you kill the centralized part of DAO, because you have single point of contact or failure for that DAO, and how do you then, of course, there is a question: how do you enforce governance votes if that particular representative or shareholder, because somebody has to incorporate that entity, does not comply? So just consideration. I'm not pointing that legal wrappers are bad, just that there is another perspective to take into account.
And also, I can also add here. In my previous message, I was saying that it's not regulated Web3 or DeFi protocols, etc. But it doesn't mean that they cannot have liability. Especially there are many cases where we see active participation on OFAC from the US, and in this case, as with the Tornado Cash, it's totally a decentralized protocol that is used for mixing. It's a mixer, but nevertheless, just because in US, in OFAC, they saw that so many criminals are using this protocol to launder money, they put this protocol under sanctions. Yeah, it's a totally different story that now it was a decision and now it's not sanctioned anymore. But still, the developers, who develop such a protocol, now they are charged with criminal liability, and the court hearing is still ongoing in the US. So even though that it's not kind of clearly, no, it's not regulated, and it's not clearly regulated, but still, even in some cases, developers can be liable if their protocols are known or largely used for some illegal activities.
Absolutely, Niko. And developer liability is very much, sorry, Sasha, I was just going to jump straight into developer liability.
I was saying that we will pose still the development liability because we are going to discuss that too. But
Let's do that.
I want to structurize that, like we are slowly coming down to the developers, like users and developers. But first, I need to look like at aspects of the solution, because we were asking DAOs, and now we need to ask about the assets, because that's another area where there are a lot of legal questions. And for me, I think we have the community, and we had a lot of questions there about the token classification, this famous discussion where like utility versus security tokens and how to approach that legally, and like basically to avoid the regulatory pitfalls, because the majority, I think the charges so far and the majority of the strangles were actually around the assets, around like security tokens, utility tokens, and there are a lot of discussions in the development. We are slowly coming like to all the parts of the solution, but currently let's stay a little bit on the concept. DAO, then the tokens, and then we are gradually coming to users and developers. Yeah, and probably Natalia.
Yeah, sure. I can start with this. I still remember the times when the legal opinions were issued on the very first ICOs, and when the lawyers, the only tools that they had, basically it was Howey test, and there are some guides to the digital token offerings. For example, in Singapore, that was issued very fast, very promptly by the regulator, by MAS, where they were just distinguishing between utility tokens and security tokens, and it was like 5-pager document. But with time, what we are seeing is that a lot of regulators are moving towards substance over form approach, and there is what we are seeing, especially in Singapore, is there is more clarifications. There are a lot more clarifications from the regulators towards what they consider security tokens, or how to distinguish between security, what is going to be securities, what is going to be utility. There is another type. There are other 2 types of tokens that are added into equation, which are payment tokens that are also regulated currently in Singapore, and the definition is set as such that it looks like any token that is not a security token, but it has some utilization as a medium of exchange, which is accepted by a sector of public. So they even limited it to a sector of public. It can be treated as a payment token. Of course, the issuance of payment tokens is not regulated yet, unless these are stable coins, etc. But if the project is not managing, but dealing in these tokens, then it can be regulated. So so the foremost is that substance over form. So you cannot just call your token utility token and just think that you will not be caught by securities laws or some other laws and payments laws and regulations, or if you're, especially if your tokens, for example, asset backed, this is another type of tokens that are also currently regulated, at least in Singapore, if they're backed by precious stones, precious metals, for example, gold backed tokens. That was there was a time, some period of time, at least in Singapore, where such tokens were very popular to be issued and to be dealt with. So the regulators came with another set of regulations to regulate the issuers and dealers in such tokens. So what the developers can do is be very careful with the functionalities of the tokens to make sure that the functionalities are pure utility functions, if they don't want to be regulated, or if they don't want to issue securities, or they don't want to be caught by the securities laws that require the prospectus to be the issuance of the tokens to be supported by prospectus or other regulatory requirements. Such things like very simple things, like very straightforward things, like avoiding words that are related to investments or promise of some profits with the use and the issuance and utilization of the tokens. These are the most, like the very first level of the security against being qualified as securities tokens or payments tokens. Yeah, so I think that's the basis, and that's what is now where the regulators are going into. They are looking into how the tokens are functioning, not just by themselves, but within the ecosystem, within the community, how they are accepted by the community. And for example, if they are accepted by the majority of the public, they may be considered as payments, as a mode of payment, and then they will become payment tokens, well, at least in Singapore. And if anyone else has, from the colleagues here, has anything else to add, I'll be happy to pass the floor.
I've
Yeah,
seen Ilija nodding the head. Yes, please.
So just to add something on communication of the teams, because what Natalia said about substance over form, I would say that would be a second step or second layer of protection. First layer of protection for projects who issue tokens should be marketing and their communications, because as Natalia said, it's very tricky and sensitive what you say, and who from your team says something like promising yields, APYs, high returns on investment, promising that or stating the token will rise in value, that you will list it on some exchanges. That's very, very, very sensitive, and that's what draws attention of regulators. And why this matters, because since the beginning of year, I think by March or February, I lost the count, 3 million of different tokens have been launched. So that number is even higher now in June. So I would say that regulators will first look into those projects and teams that promise those sensitive things that would fall under securities law, because there are so many tokens, so many projects, and regulators and their staff can only focus on very few that are most notorious, or those who evidently look like they're in a breach of some regulations. That would be my take on securities versus utility tokens.
Thank you. Eva, Niko, would you like to add something? Okay, then we are moving to the next question, and I would like to cover AML topic because we all know that there is FATF with its travel rule and with its recommendations, and the majority of the countries are listening to what FATF, probably slowly, probably creating recommendations slowly, but anyway, we will need to know what are the implications of AML and KYC regulations for DeFi platforms, and how can they balance compliance with decentralization? Again, we want a decentralization, we want anonymity, and there is a KYC. From one point of view, like for example, EPAM participated in developing the OpenWASP protocol, and our implementation of OpenWASP protocol is that we are going over the Ethereum network, but we are not spoiling everything. We are just like using Whisper to transmit the originator and receiver of the transactions, but only those who involved in the transaction will know. So at least we are not exposing that to the whole network. But there are a lot of other solutions, and there are a lot of there is a need to balance the clarity and anonymity. Do we have anyone willing to speak about that?
Yeah, I can start since I work in this dimension, anti-money laundering. So when it comes to DeFi, yes, I mentioned before, so usually they're not regulated. There is no requirement for them to follow any KYC, AML processes, but they can still be liable, as we see, for example, developers, and it would be interesting to hear what Eva would be saying about developers' liability. So that's why what we see in the market, that it could be two solutions, yes? The first one that DeFi can do is that, okay, they can implement some KYC layer. There's two ways to do it. They can do it inside their code. So regardless who will be using the protocol will still need to be verified and identified. And this is less probable way of development because it would definitely create disadvantages if compared to other protocols that don't use this in the code. So that's why there is another way to handle it is just to put it as an intermediary layer as a front end, let's say. And we already have cases, for example, if I'm not mistaken, there are some liquidity decentralized pool that identify, verify the clients in order to allow them to access it. So we already have these cases in place. But still, I would not go that much in terms of KYC, like real identification, verification, and DeFi collecting information about the customer. I think this is not viable at the moment because there is a lot of big issues coming out of the data protection laws and regulation. But what we see in the market, since we do sell this KYT software, that many DeFi protocols started to implement blockchain solutions, meaning they check the address that connects to their protocol, whether that address has some risk, for example, sanctions, or whether the address was dealing before with some illegal cryptocurrency, etc. And on the basis of this, they can decide whether they can allow this address, this person to connect and use the protocol or not. So this could be one of the possible ways how they can mitigate risk, for example, of those who wants to launder money using the protocol, or for those who wants to evade sanctions, etc. So that would be maybe one of the first steps to do when we talk about DeFi protocols. And when it comes to KYC data, I would not want this to be imposed on DeFi protocols. It should be rather imposed on those centralized businesses that do off-ramp, on-ramp, meaning if there is funds coming from DeFi to off-ramp to on-ramp solutions, that's where the person needs to be identified and verified. But yeah, importance on DeFi protocols. I don't think it's viable at the moment. Another solutions, for example, if there is not only to use blockchain analytics and to know if only the address has some risk, but also to be sure that also the person does not have any risk, is for DeFi protocol to use zero-knowledge protocol, meaning that there are different companies who does it, that basically they just receive a token, let's say, and the token that shows the DeFi protocol that this person was verified, identified by another external company. And if the verification and identification is good, for example, no sanctions, the person is above 18 years old, so they can actually do some financial transactions, then this token can be sent to DeFi protocol, and DeFi protocol just receives the token. They don't know who this person is and allow this person to use the protocol. So that's what I see kind of solutions. How can this AML KYC risk can be mitigated by DeFi protocol and for the development?
Well, I love this the recently mentioned solution, because as a developers, we are constantly offering that to our clients who are scared. But well, because of the technology novelty, like the traditional financial institutions are reluctant to use the key methods, but we do hope that this year, next year, like very time soon, it would come into the everyday practice. And Eva, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was very much from the tech perspective, it's very much about zero knowledge proofs at the moment, and proof of personhood, proof of humanity, proof of humanness. I think there's a lot of that coming around in the space, not just in Polkadot, but in the other protocols as well. So there's a lot to see how that works there. But the other thing that kind of triggered my mind was most recently, I think most of you will have seen the European Data Protection Board's guidelines on data protection and blockchain. So that's another one to look at, because yes, we're coming up with technical solutions, but the regulators are coming up with other things to help us confuse our minds and see. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work with ZK protocols and proof of personhood, because the very existence of blockchains might be at risk because of the nature of the data that the guidelines are currently saying could be seen as personal data and should be subject to GDPR, including the right to be, including deletion. So there's what we're thinking as technical solutions, and then there's the regulators, and there at some point there has to be conversations and education to be had there. So that was my only thought on what Niko was saying around AML. It's very exciting. It's an exciting place to be, because there are tensions between, you know, law enforcement and very legitimate reasons to be seeking using privacy versus law enforcement. It's always going to be a constant battle. Web2 world, and now in the Web3 world.
I keep saying that I love our discussion, but let's slowly move, because I'm also time conscious. We can, I think, talk forever, but we're all limited in time. So I would like to move to the user protection and what actually should be developed for users to safeguard their privacy and data in a decentralized Web3 environment. Consider global data protection law and everything which Eva just mentioned, because there are quite strict regulations, and depending on the industry where a solution is being applied, because it's not always money. Sometimes there are ideas to implement decentralized solutions to the medical services and to something of that. And well, I'm looking to your faces. Who wants to speak about that? Ilija?
Yeah, I can start off. Although I've already mentioned issues with guidelines from European Data Protection Board, but yeah, just to like a general framework, data protection and blockchain are maybe at odds because blockchains are by design transparent, while data protection should preserve anonymity. On the other side, blockchain users are usually able to retain their pseudo-anonymity. The issue with guidelines from European Data Protection Board is that they overreach and overextend applicability of GDPR because according to them, wallet addresses are personal data. Validator nodes could violate GDPR, and smart contracts need human overrides. Besides, they prefer private blockchains over public blockchains because they see them as non-compliant. So taken to the extreme, these guidelines suggest that if you are not able to erase data from your users, then full deletion of blockchains are mandatory. And as I said, public blockchains are discouraged over permissioned. And that can show global validators industry. And besides that, it can ruin all the hard work that regulators have done and the European legislator for MiCA to come into effect. I'm not sure what was the intention with such guidelines, whether it was malicious or something related to ignorance, but it really makes life difficult for my fellow colleagues in Europe, and potentially, if the issue is not resolved, for developers as well.
Niko, do you have something to add to that?
I agree with my colleagues, and at INADMA, for example, we also analyze these guidelines made by European Data Protection Board, and we were very concerned. First of all, when they say that public blockchain would most probably be not compliant with GDPR, so they actually lobby to use permission blockchain. And also, how do they qualify hashes of data? But they say that hash can be considered a personal data. That they disregard completely technologies such as zero knowledge, ZK, zero knowledge proof, and other privacy-enhancing technology. So I think we even prepared our own commentaries and sent them. And I agree also with Eva that it should be the communication between private sector, between the technology specialist, with the representation of another regulatory authorities, where they can actually prove that the public blockchain and another technology can actually benefit data protection. And maybe in some cases, it should not be just blindly applied to them, but there should be some still flexible approach, understanding, and also even when it comes to the right to erasure, yes, which is, if you will think, it's not possible when it comes to blockchain, because what happens in the blockchain stays in the blockchain for forever. But there are still technologies when, for example, if it comes to, there is private public keys, the private keys can be made invalid, or the hash. There is something that is still, even though the blockchain gives you this function that you cannot erase anything, but there is still some other technologies that can make the link with hashes and personal data impossible over there.
Well, I'm fully with you here, and as leading the developers and leading a lot of developers, that's what is a pain. Even 5 years ago, I was living in Europe at that time, and I was discussing this wonderful situation with auditing organization where, yes, indeed, hash on a personal data considered to be a personal data. And when I tried to find any reason, any explanation, because everybody knows it's not possible to derive anything from a hash. And still, that's a personal data. And still, the rule to be deleted, like we were implementing the solution. There was still private blockchain, but it's perfectly applicable. It was EVM blockchain, where we've implemented the hierarchy of the keys, and where the rule, like the deletion of the data, was implementing as a key revocation with the proof, which means that you cannot access this data at all. And it was fine with the legal stuff, because it was like there was a solution for the pension system. And you could imagine that's the data stored for 80 years and all of this. So technically it's possible, but the cost of developing this solution appeared to be at least 4 or 5 times more than just developing a blockchain solution, because of all those complexities, which are ridiculous in some cases. Yes, and we all know the nature of the blockchain. So I do believe that quite some work of explaining needs to be done. But we all are coming to the most beloved, probably, topic, and that's the developer's liability. And that's what I really would like to discuss here, because there are a lot of developers watching us. And my question is, guys, you all are experienced. What legal risks to developers, do developers face regarding smart contracts vulnerabilities and potential liabilities once, I will just throw you this developer's liability. And please share your opinions, because I'm sure there are a lot of developers who are listening to us and they need to understand this topic much more.
I can start. Well, considering I'm going from the developer perspective. So welcome, developers. We love you because you are the builders who build and make this possible. Without you, lawyers would have nothing to opine about when it comes to blockchain. So keep building, and we keep trying to keep people safe when you innovate and when you build. Now, we are very short on time. And as you know, I did a whole talk about this in November at DevCon. So you can just listen to my talk from then. It is, of course, 6 months ago now, and not everything, quite a lot has moved on since then. So I don't want to go through every single point, because we've only got 4 minutes left, and I want other people to have the opportunity to opine on it as well. But obviously there's contract, there's negligence, there's duty of care, fiduciary duties potentially, regulatory risks, product liability risk, and an individual's participation through DAO, which we already mentioned at the beginning, which could create liabilities for a developer in with their different hats on, because you could be a developer in many different contexts. So that's my DevCon talk in 30 seconds. What's changed since then, I think quite significantly, is the regulatory landscape, more so in the US, and the enforcement landscape in the US. So I will quickly just touch upon that, because we talked about Tornado Cash. Tornado Cash is a big case in the US, but also in the Netherlands. And the changes here is that last November, there was a case which meant that the courts held that immutable smart contracts were not considered to be property that could be owned or controlled by an individual, and therefore Tornado Cash, as a decentralized protocol, was acted without a central authority and without a person that could be sanctioned, and without property that can be sanctioned. That case was dropped, and OFAC was no longer could sanction Tornado Cash. That was, in a nutshell, a lot of legal stuff going on there. But what it doesn't mean, though, is that the developers are off the hook entirely. It just means that that bit is quite precedent setting, and it will impact the developer liability case for both Roman Storm in the US, but also Alexei in Putsev in the Netherlands. And both of those cases are still going to court. In the US, the other update is that the Department of Justice, the enforcement arm, so to speak, of the criminal case for Roman Storm, issued a memo, a briefing, Todd Blanche, this was in April, which basically said that they are reviewing the focus of their enforcement. And that is nuanced, because it doesn't mean that they're going to stop enforcing certain types of crypto-related cases or privacy mixers. It just means that they might be looking at it slightly differently, with a different perspective. And they are still enforcing, so it's not like a complete carte blanche by Todd Blanche, but it's a we're going to look at things slightly differently, because it's a different regime and it's a different outlook on the industry now. So I'm going to stop there because I could literally talk hours about this, because it is my job to protect the developers in my company, and therefore I share the education that I know and the knowledge that I know to developers everywhere else as well.
Guys, we still have 6 minutes. Does anyone wants to add anything, or shall we ask the public questions, which probably sticking somewhere? What is your opinion? Would you like to add to this?
What are the public questions? I mean,
okay.
please.
Yeah. Dear elves, yeah. Do you see the question, right? Shall I phrase that probably for somebody who is listening, just listening? Could a DAO utilize a nominee-managed, headless Bermuda company to oversee its operations and safeguard its intellectual property? And what are the best practices and recommendations would you offer?
I could have a general go at this, but this is like asking for legal advice. So this is me saying, if you came to me, I would have to charge an hourly rate of X, and it would take a couple of weeks, and also ask lots more questions before one would answer that specific question with sufficient substance to protect the person asking the question. But I would say, I don't know what the Bermuda regulations are around DAOs, so maybe someone else does, but I would say its operations and safeguarding its intellectual property. There's a difference between even within a DAO, there can be different levels of decision making that you might want to consider. So it's not Bermuda specific, but a DAO can protect the participants better if you consider the different levels of governance. So technical versus voting on big strategic changes to the organization, for example, or product launches. So I'd say, could a DAO do that? Maybe. That's what lawyers like to say. Maybe. It depends. Anyone else?
Okay, we answered the question, seems to be. Dear elves, do we have another question? How do industry groups influence blockchain rules, and should companies join them? Anyone?
I can add something to this. On a European level, as Niko said, there is INATBA. It's an association. Not sure how do you approach them. They are advocates for better crypto regulations, and also great job that European Crypto Initiative does on all levels. So to begin with, just reach out and look if you can support them in any ways, either financially or with your expertise or connections to regulators or legislators. Every bit counts. I don't know about other continents, but they do very difficult and important job.
Just to add to that, there's blockchain for Europe as well that we're aware of, and in the UK there's Crypto UK. In the US, we are aware of a lot of activities, particularly in support of like Tornado Cash and developers, for example, from the DeFi Education Fund, Crypto something Alliance, and there's Blockchain Association, there's Coin Center. There are many organizations that try to advocate and also to provide education specifically. And I think there was a latest addition to the Clarity Act. There was another addition to the Clarity Act, which was intended to help protect software developers, that was added either last week or earlier this week, through some of the advocacy work that had been provided by some of these organizations. So I would have to go and double check that, but it was there's a lot of work that goes on the US side, certainly, to help educate the lawmakers.
Guys, we are at the end of our conversation, and it was a true pleasure to talk to you, to have you here, and to have your wisdom and the wonderful discussion. I like the controversy in the discussion. And if I may, I will reserve the possibility, because we are in contact with you, we will collect all the questions which are coming and we will post it to you. And if you will have time and desire to answer that, and we all know, and we are repeating one more time, we are not giving any legal advices here. We are sharing opinions, and they shouldn't be used as a legal advice. But thank you, and we are very proud that you found the time to come to us and to discuss that. And thank you, guys. Enjoy your day, and that was a remarkable conversation.
Thank you,
Thank
Sasha.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.